What could a child buy with a few pennies in 1950s Britain? In a society still shadowed by wartime austerity, where every shilling was carefully accounted for, the answer was a small universe of their own choosing. The true value of pocket money was not just in the sweets or comics it could purchase, but in the sense of autonomy it granted. In the sweet shops and newsagents of the nation, a quiet revolution was taking place. It wasn't driven by governments or grand events, but by tiny, affordable objects that gave a generation of children their first taste of economic freedom, and turned every saved coin into a piece of a collection. Before pocket money, the shared toy box. The decade began under the long grey shadow of the Second World War. Britain was financially exhausted. Its cities bore the physical scars of the Blitz, and daily life was governed by a web of state regulations and shortages. Rationing, a wartime necessity, persisted long into peacetime, shaping household economies and the national diet. Key commodities such as butter, meat, tea, sugar, and coal remained on the ration book well into the 1950s, a constant reminder of the country's precarious economic state. The government's brief attempt to de-ration sweets in 1949 had to be abandoned due to overwhelming demand, a clear signal of the immense pent-up consumer desire after years of deprivation. This environment of scarcity cultivated a pervasive make-do-and-mend culture. Resourcefulness was a virtue born of necessity, extending from patching clothes and growing vegetables in back gardens to the world of play. Toys from the early 1950s directly reflected these material constraints. Furthermore, the Korean War, which began in 1950, triggered a global rearmament process that led to acute shortages of raw materials, particularly metal. This disruption directly impacted the toy industry, with major manufacturers like Meccano Limited finding their production of iconic metal toys hampered. Toy production was subject to the same stringent controls as any other industry, limiting output and innovation in the decade's opening years. As a result, toys were often seen as family heirlooms rather than personal possessions. An intricate Hornby Dublo train set was a significant investment and a powerful symbol of middle-class aspiration. These sets featured high-quality die-cast metal locomotives and tinplate carriages, running on a robust but less realistic three-rail track system. Their expense and the scarcity of their core materials meant they were often passed down through generations, representing a communal family asset. A child's toy box was more likely to contain homemade items, or perhaps a few cherished shared objects, than a vast collection of shop-bought treasures. Play was often a shared experience centered on these few durable, built-to-last items. The sweet shop revolution, Matchbox. This landscape of communal, inherited play was permanently altered in 1953 with the launch of a new kind of toy. The creators were Lesney Products, a company founded by Leslie Smith and Rodney Smith, who understood the untapped power of scale and price point. Their Matchbox series of miniature die-cast cars was a work of commercial genius. The innovation was beautifully simple. Each vehicle was designed to be small enough to fit inside a standard matchbox. This decision was not arbitrary. It defined their appeal and their market. The cars were cheap, portable, and eminently collectible. Sold in newsagents and sweet shops, they were positioned as the perfect impulse buy for a child with a few saved coins clutched in their hand. For the first time, a working-class child could afford to own a whole fleet of detailed, realistic vehicles, from saloon cars to double-decker buses. The Matchbox-style packaging was more than a gimmick. It was a promise of affordability and accessibility that transformed the toy market. The engineering behind these tiny objects was also significant. They were made from a die-cast zinc alloy known as Zamac, the same material used by market leader Dinky Toys, but produced at a fraction of the size and cost. The level of detail Lesnie achieved at this miniature scale was remarkable, capturing the imagination of children who could now create sprawling road networks on the living room carpet. This combination of clever design, precise manufacturing, and a revolutionary price point allowed Matchbox to create a new category of toy, one built not for special occasions, but for the everyday power of pocket money. Building an army, one figure at a time. The power of incremental purchasing extended well beyond vehicles. Plastic toy soldiers became another staple of the pocket money economy, allowing children to slowly build vast armies over time. While metal soldiers had been a feature of toy boxes for decades, often made from hollow cast lead, the 1950s saw a decisive shift towards plastic. This change was driven by several factors. Plastic was far cheaper to produce through injection molding, making the figures more affordable for a mass market. As the decade progressed, there were also growing concerns over the potential health hazards of lead paint and the toxicity of lead itself, which would eventually lead to a ban. Plastic was promoted as a modern, safe, and hygienic alternative, free from the dangers of lead or the sharp edges of tinplate toys. The real magic of plastic soldiers lay in how they were sold. Rather than being offered only in expensive boxed sets, figures were often available individually for just pennies. This method of collecting taught patience and planning. A single purchase might add a new infantryman, a cavalry officer, or a piece of artillery to a child's forces. Each trip to the toy shop became a strategic decision, a small act of building a personal world, one figure at a time. This pattern of play was especially common for boys, whose toy collections often centered on themes of conflict and transport, mirroring both the recent collective memory of war and the anxieties of the new Cold War era. The living room floor could be transformed into a battlefield, with complex narratives and strategies playing out over hours, all assembled from a collection built coin by coin. The kit in a bag. Airfix. The challenge of making complex toys affordable was also met by another great innovator, Airfix. The company was founded in 1939 by Nicholas Cove, a refugee from Hungary who had fled persecution in continental Europe. After the war, Cove shifted the company's focus to plastics, a decision that would reshape the toy industry. Airfix's breakthrough came in 1952 when it began selling a model kit of Sir Francis Drake's ship, the Golden Hind, through the high street giant Woolworths. However, the key to its immense success was a combination of new material and radically innovative packaging. The kits were made from polystyrene, a stable and easily molded plastic perfectly suited to the rapid manufacturing process of injection molding. This dramatically lowered production costs compared to traditional metal or wood. Crucially, Airfix sold its early kits in a simple plastic bag with a cardboard header, foregoing an expensive box. This approach slashed the retail price, making the highly skilled hobby of model making accessible to children with only pocket money to spend. The first aircraft kit, a Supermarine Spitfire, followed in 1953 for the price of just 2 shillings. This strategy democratized a hobby that had previously been the preserve of dedicated and often wealthy adult enthusiasts. The low price point and accessible packaging meant that any child could walk into a Woolworths or a local newsagent and walk out with a project. Assembling an Airfix kit required patience, dexterity, and the ability to follow instructions, translating the make do and mend ethos into a creative pastime. The company also established the 1/72 scale that would become a global standard for aircraft modelers, cementing its long-term influence on the hobby it had created. Airfix did not just sell models, it sold the profound satisfaction of building something from its component parts. The American invasion, westerns and licensing. As British children gained more purchasing power, new influences from across the Atlantic began to shape their desires. The 1950s saw the first significant wave of American cultural influence on the British playground. The allure of Hollywood was undeniable, with Western films fueling an insatiable demand for cowboy and Indian playsets, complete with replica cap guns and holsters. Walt Disney was another major force. Blockbuster animated films like Cinderella, 1950, and Alice in Wonderland, 1951, were accompanied by extensive lines of licensed toys, prefiguring the global entertainment franchise model that dominates today. This trend was powerfully amplified by the arrival of mass media in British homes. The 1953 coronation of Queen Elizabeth II was the primary catalyst for the mass adoption of television in Britain. Millions of families bought or rented a television set for the first time specifically to watch the ceremony, transforming the media landscape overnight. This was followed by the launch of Britain's first commercial channel, ITV, in 1955, which introduced television advertising directly to children for the first time. This created a powerful new engine for marketing toys, forging a direct link between what children watched and what they wanted to buy. Demand was no longer driven solely by tradition or by a toy's physical attributes, but increasingly by media content. Stars of early children's shows like Muffin the Mule, Andy Pandy, and the Flower Pot Men became household names, spawning a vast array of toys, books, and other products. A child could now use their pocket money to buy into a media franchise, owning a piece of the story they saw on screen. This marked the beginning of a profound shift that would come to define the industry for the rest of the century. The collector's instinct. The true legacy of these pocket money toys was not just the objects themselves, but the mindset they created. They fostered the collector's instinct in an entire generation, The act of saving, choosing and purchasing gave children a new sense of autonomy and personal ownership. A collection of Matchbox cars lined up on a windowsill or an army of plastic soldiers arranged for battle was more than a playset. It was a personal achievement, curated and paid for over time. This shift marked the birth of the modern child consumer. It moved the center of a child's world from the shared family toy box filled with inherited and often expensive items to their own private collection of affordable, personally selected treasures. It taught the quiet joy of accumulation and the satisfaction of building something personal from small, affordable parts. This era is now powerfully embedded in Britain's popular memory, often romanticized as a lost world of freedom and simplicity. The toys are remembered as being more wholesome, requiring skill and patience in contrast to the perceived passive consumption of modern entertainment. While children certainly had more freedom of movement, the historical reality was more complex. The 1950s was a socially conservative period, with strict discipline in schools and at home. Social norms surrounding class and gender were rigid, powerfully reinforced by the clear divisions in the toy box. And while affluence was growing, class distinctions remained a powerful force. A child's toy collection was a clear marker of their family's economic standing. The powerful nostalgia for these objects is therefore less about a precise memory of the past and more a reaction to the perceived problems of the present. The idealization of these toys is fueled by contemporary anxieties about modern childhood, concerns over screen time, a lack of outdoor play, and a decline in practical, hands-on skills. In this context, the toys of the 1950s serve as a symbolic counterpoint. Assembling an Airfix kit embodies patience versus the instant gratification of a video game. In the end, these simple toys of metal and plastic did more than just entertain. They created the blueprint for the modern toy market and left behind a world where a toy was something you were given for one, where it was something you could earn for yourself. So, which of these toys do you remember? Let me know in the comments below. And for more journeys into Britain's past, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.